Ads. Okay. All right. Hello, everybody.
Hey, Megan. Hey,
welcome.
everybody.
Thank you again, Megan, for doing another interview. Appreciate it.
Of course.
How's your day?
It was busy, really busy.
It's good. Well, thank you for a little time. We will hopefully not take up nearly as long as we did on the last one.
All right, cool.
So our topic tonight is training barns, and I think to start this out, we probably should, and of course this is all equestrian related, maybe just go into the very basic differences between a pure boarding facility, maybe a boarding facility where, you know, people are taking lessons for one or more trainers that pop in and out, and then the training barn.
Okay. Well, you can also help out in the boarding because I haven't boarded much.
Sure.
However, as far as I understand, for boarding barns, you're paying for the board, and you pretty much have free reign, correct? You can come at all hours.
Well, I think it definitely depends on the facility. A lot of facilities, I think, have a little bit of a, you know, hours. They may not be hard and fast hours, but, you know, they're probably try not to come before 6 in the morning and maybe don't come after 9 o'clock at night. I think there are some boarding barns out there. You could come at all hours and they just don't care. So I think that you're going to find the, you know, all spectrums of that for sure. And
yeah, and I think there's many ranges, right? You know, also in terms of it's more like it could be more a la carte, you know, or do most barns provide feed?
Right. You're definitely going to see, like, what does the term board cover? Does that just cover the horse on the property, and then is the owner responsible for feed and care, or is that included in the board? Places I've boarded in the past, horse feed and basic care has been covered. You know, they always make sure that there's at least 2 to 3 times a day hay, and then I think it depends on your situation if you know, a horse is getting grain or not, you know, kind of commercialized feed or something. But
and supplements are not included. And then do barn owners or do the owners manage, like, contacting the vet, contacting the farrier? So that's mainly done by the owner, correct?
I think so. I think in my, you know, last many years of, you know, I haven't been a boarder either in a long time, but a lot of times I think, you know, unless you're at a horse owner provided care facility where they're just letting you have the horse on the property and you do all the work, most of the time the barn owner or manager, I think, contacts the owner if you know, they're seeing a deep cut, emergency situations. I think in my you know, past, you know, if it's been a real emergency, they've always directly called the vet. But that's just a situation. You go, you put your horse in there, and, you know, either you as the owner are paying for the feed, or you know, the facility is, and that is always going to be facility by facility and what you agree upon. And then of course there's always the idea of there's rough board, which rough board is pasture board, and where I live, they call it rough board. It's pasture. The horse does not come into the building, into a stall at night. And then there's stall board, where the horse has a dedicated stall that it lives in, either just in the evenings, or maybe the horse is at a limited turnout situation where it can only be in pasture 1 hour or 4 hours a day. So that's probably going to be different.
And do the owners of the horses get to choose how long the horses stay out? You know, like, is that? How
right?
is that? You know, I think that's something also to talk about, you know, and I think that's different versus boarding versus a training barn.
For sure.
But I think the owner is facilitating a lot, the majority of it, the care of the horse, and then
Right,
it's worked out with the management.
right.
Is there anything else we need to talk about in terms of boarding? You know, and obviously being clear that each boarding facility is different and that everyone should ask what the rules are, what are the services that are offered, but on a broad basis. Generally, the feed the feed, the stall, and the turnout are what are included in boarding, right? And
Right.
and the owner is facilitating how long the horse goes out, what the horse gets fed.
Maybe, not always. So
Not always.
sometimes I think it's important for people to have those conversations when they look at a boarding facility, because I've been at boarding facilities where the horses get their feed in the morning and they're turned out all day and out they go. And because the staff is either, you know, spending the rest of the day cleaning stalls or cleans the stalls and is otherwise occupied until a certain time where they come and do turn-ins. So for sure, that's something that horse owner would need to talk about. But the other thing I think about boarding facilities is they generally don't necessarily have like one trainer there. They may have no one, and they may be fine. You want to bring somebody in, just make sure they're insured, or they may not even ask that. But there's not necessarily any kind of horse trainer at the facility. It's just a care facility where the horse lives. So,
Yeah.
in my opinion, more of a straight up board situation than.
Yep.
That I think a lot of people are probably fairly familiar with. So
Yep. I didn't even think about that, the trainer. Whereas I can only speak from how I manage my facility, and I think all training facilities are very different as well. I can just talk on my management standpoint, how it's different than a boarding facility. I guess, should we just delve into it?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
So you have a dressage facility, and it is not a boarding barn. We'll clarify that this is one of the reasons we're discussing this. Your facility is a training facility.
Yep. Yep. So whether it's the horse that's in training and I'm the sole rider, or the horse and the rider, the owner, are in training. And so, and their either option is managed by me. And so what I like to say, and I find some people are very opposed to it, and I feel bad. Maybe it's the way I come across in explaining it. And so I'm really excited that you asked me to do this. So I run it like a doctor's office. And so everyone has an appointment. And for me, I found living in the colder weather, and I'm a person who likes to continually ride, and then I like to have a little break and then get my head in gear for teaching, and then I teach the rest of the afternoon. So depending on my day, I could be on my first horse at 6:30, 7 a.m. in the morning, and I ride until noon. And then around noon or 1 o'clock, I start teaching, and then I teach until 7, depending on the day. Like on Wednesdays, I try to get out early. Sundays, I try to get out early, maybe 5 o'clock. So that way I can run or have a life. And so, but what this does for me, being in a colder state, I can get warm and ride my first horse and stay riding each horse, because I'm lucky I have staff that usually, I tack up my first horse because the first horse is usually mine. And I really, the thing I miss about owning a training barn is the relationship with the horses. And I love brushing them. I love caring for them. But realistically, I can't brush every horse. And so I have to rely on my staff. And so I am on one horse, I get off, my working student takes care of my horse, whether it's cold hosing, they go to the solarium, and then I get on the next horse. And so my entire morning is on horses. And then, so I don't have to worry about getting off, teaching someone, getting cold. And I did that like my first 2 years, and I got so sick because I'd get hot, I'd get cold, I'd teach anybody, I'd let anybody in at any time, and it was mass chaos. The other reason I do it is because then I can, whether I'm riding a horse or I'm teaching someone, each person who has paid me to do something for them, I set time aside for them. And so that way I'm not being interrupted while I'm riding a horse. Someone coming up, well, Megan, do I have this wrap on? Or what about this? Or what do you suggest we do with this horse? Or, or should we call the vet? Or, like, I'm not being interrupted. And I think that's really important to understand a trainer's life. That unfortunately we do only have allotted time per horse, that we have to dedicate our time to each horse and rider. I mean, obviously, if I need to train a horse longer than an hour, it will be done. But that way there are no interruptions while I'm riding, which may or may not happen at a boarding facility. Someone may come in with a tractor, someone may be lunging a horse. I'm the only trainer at my facility. So I consider it lucky. However, there are pros and cons to that, because it's fun to work with other trainers. And then obviously the afternoon is lessons. And so also there too, I manage it that I ask people to come 45 minutes to a half an hour before. If they need an hour to tack up, whatever, not before that. And then they have their hour to ride. I usually set aside an hour per person. Usually it's 45 minutes to an hour. And then it's the next person's time. And so unfortunately, if they are late, their time still ends at their allotted time. Because if you look at my day, that's 13 hours. That's 12-hour days. And so if one individual is late and make the next one late and the next one late, then I'm out there for a long time.
You covered a lot of really important things. And I think what you just said is really important for people to understand, is that this is your job. It's also your passion, obviously, but you have a schedule of things you have to accomplish, deadlines, we'll call it deadlines, but you have a set number of horses you're going to ride, and you have a set appointment book of lessons that you're teaching per day. And I think a lot of people who have never experienced a training barn may have a hard time making that connection. If they've been at a boarding facility for a certain amount of time, and they're just kind of used to coming and going and talking to people and just shooting the breeze and kind of just doing things at their own pace, it may be difficult for them to understand the concept of, like you said, equating it to like a doctor's office. You've got an appointment, you need to be prompt and be respectful. And I think a lot of it is they don't understand that it is also being respectful to your personal time, because it's not just you, but it's all your other clients as well.
That are included. And it doesn't matter if they're a pleasure rider or a competition rider. I want to put in 110% into that lesson, and no matter what their goals are, whether it's learning how to post the trot or it's getting to Grand Prix, each individual at my barn, they have goals. They may be serious in their goals, they may not be, and that hour is devoted to them. And it's not that I don't want to have fun at all. Actually, we have a lot of fun, and it's not like that the clients don't have fun with each other, but they're just very goal oriented at my facility. Anyway, I can't speak at other facilities. And it's a lot of horses. We have a 24 stall barn. Luckily right now it is not full. But still, to get through so many horses, that's a lot. That's a lot of work, whether it's I'm riding the horses or I'm teaching people. All of those horses are usually worked 5 to 6 days a week. So that doesn't leave a lot of time for much. And I do want to have a life sometimes.
Understandable, right? Sleep is appropriate. I understand that. So,
yeah.
One of the things that people may not understand if coming from a pure boarding facility and moving into a training facility or training situation, sort of similar to what we were just discussing, but you mentioned earlier, you set aside, you know, a certain amount of time that your client gets, and then it's on to the next. Now, one of the things, like I experienced at a boarding facility, I may have been having a lesson, or, you know, with the trainer, and there's constant interruptions because it is an open boarding facility. Other boarders, other people that have their horses at the facility can come in and ride at the same time, and then you get all you know, other horses in the arena, but you also get potentially onlookers and guests, and pretty soon you might get a little bit of a crowd, and you get people kind of commenting and interrupting, and maybe they don't understand what they're seeing. So instead of just sitting and watching and waiting until the lesson's over, they start interrupting and asking the trainer about what the trainer's trying to teach the person riding, and pretty soon you have pretty significant interruptions to the lesson and what, you know, the person riding, or in the case of, you know, maybe you riding the horse, is paying you for your time, and then you have somebody else who's interrupting. So what do you do in your barn? Are guests allowed? Are people allowed to watch other people's lessons? What is your philosophy on that?
They are. However, they have to ask. I have multiple situations. So I have clients who would like to bring a guest, whether it's someone who's interested in taking a lesson, maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's grandma. And so I just ask that they give me 24 hours notice and just let me know that someone's coming. We have a bench at the end of our arena, and I love it because a lot of my riders are competition riders, and we're pretty spoiled here. We don't have to share the arena with anyone, and so it's important too that when they go to a show, they're respectful of others and know how to ride with other riders. I think that's really important. And so so guests can come and watch. And that way they can also practice on their nerves too, because they also get really nervous because no one's watching them. And then I do have on occasion people ask if they can come see my lessons before they come take a lesson. And so what I do is, I know certain people do not like their lessons watched. And so obviously I'm not going to ask them. I do ask other students prior to their lesson if someone can come. And so they are more than welcome to come and watch a lesson as long as that client is okay with it. The other thing is, I actually like to have riders, I touched on it before, having riders ride with each other. That's also, you know, they're paying for private lessons, but like I said, my riders also compete a lot. And so coming into show season, maybe not so much in the winter, but sometimes I like them riding with other riders so we can have guests that way as well. As well as it can get boring. And so like today, I had two riders that are looking to compete. And so I put them together, and we had like a little pas de deux. It was a lot of fun, and they sat up straighter and they rode, you know, with more passion. And so, yeah, other times, like my mother likes to come and watch me ride. And so it's good. So we have people, we welcome guests, but only on appointment, and as long as the student is okay with it.
So let's talk about the idea of guests. The thing at boarding facilities, and it depends obviously on the facility and how big and how many boarders they might have, but I have been at pretty large facilities that may have 60 or 80 boarded horses. You know, these are 100 acres, multiple barns, and there's just people everywhere coming and going, and you know, you don't know who's walking through the barns, touching how many horses. You know, maybe somebody brought their brother or sister-in-law and their kids who are visiting, and the kids are running up and down the aisle screaming or touching all the horses' faces, and so that's definitely a little, I think, different than probably your type of training situation.
Yeah, I think that's definitely different. Actually, one of the rules is do not touch someone else's horse unless you have permission. You know,
Let's
first of all,
let's go. Let's not go any further than that. There's, I think, probably a couple good reasons why. So let's touch on why.
yeah, biosecurity number one. I mean, if you're touching someone else's horse and maybe he has a snotty nose, you have no idea what he may have. If you're coming from a different facility, again, if you just got off your horse, now you're transferring whatever that horse may have, and they may not. Most of the time, let's be honest, most of the time they don't. But just on you know, from transferring whatever they have, just
Outbreaks happen. This is
don't do
how
it.
things get transmitted sometimes. For instance, the horse illness called strangles can be very easily transmitted by somebody if a horse blows his nose on you, and then you touch, you know, the snot. You maybe wipe it off your shoulder, and then you go and touch another horse. Same thing for equine herpes virus and other type.
Yep.
You know, similar to the current situation with COVID.
Yep.
So
You just don't know.
highly transmittable.
Yeah, you just don't know what you're going to be transferring. You know, and especially when you just walk down the aisle, you're going from one horse to the next, to the next, the next, touching them. The other thing is you have no idea if that horse bites. And yes, you may be a horse person. You may be the next horse whisperer. However, it is the trainer's responsibility, you know, it's liability, you know, I don't have time to deal with someone gets bit, you know, then I have to, you know, take you to the hospital and care for you, you know, that's, hey, and, but also, you don't know the horse's history. And sometimes the horse may be fearful and bites you. Maybe it is a very oral horse and the trainer's been working really hard, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 2 months, and you go and give it a treat. And then you might have ruined the work of the trainer, of the owner. You just don't know. You're not the trainer. Please be respectful. Also, you don't know the diet of the horse. You
Right.
know, maybe
That's another key one. People walking through giving treats without asking. And actually, the other related would be someone actually going into a stall to pet a horse or whatever.
Yeah.
A dangerous
Yeah.
situation. I actually know somebody who had a horse that was well known for kicking, and there were signs on the stall: "Stay out of the stall. This horse kicks." You know, that the staff knew how to handle the horse, and they knew the warning signs. And they had somebody who thought they were going to be helpful, and I'm just going to go pick stalls, and charged in there with the horse, you know, the manure fork, and the horse turned around and kicked, and that
Terrible.
and there were warning signs saying stay out. They weren't authorized to go into the stall, and they got hurt, and they sued the owner in the facility, and so it's very important for people to understand. And I think a lot of people don't understand, if it's not your horse, you have no right to be handling it.
Touching it. Yeah. Yeah.
Any
Please.
sort of touching it, feeding it treats, as you mentioned. A lot of horses have, like you mentioned, maybe have specific diets, allergies, or, you know, whatever.
Oh, the other big thing too is lately coming out, our horses get drug tested at the horse shows, and if you feed them something, you know, and it's harmless, you just never know. I generally don't feed my horses treats for that reason, but you just, other than apples and carrots, but you don't know what they might test positive, and if you're not responsible for the horse, don't feed them, you know. So I think that's really important, whether it's a boarding facility or a training facility, but I think it's easier to manage in a training facility. That's where I'm lucky to be able to manage all of that, being one owner, one trainer, and kind of having a hierarchy there.
For sure. Yeah. You know, you think about horses who have the disease or illness, whatever you want to call it, Cushing's, which means the horse may be also insulin resistant, and then somebody's, I brought out sugar cubes and stuff like that, and you're potentially seriously making the horse quite ill and not even knowing it. So
Yeah. And going on to that on management, I would say in a training barn, I rely heavily on my team. Just kind of moving into like management side. So, and who I consider my team is my left hand is actually my vet and my right hand is my farrier. And so I use them as well as checks and balances. I also part of my team is the owner and is my staff. And in just talking about that and running the barn, I manage the horse's life. And so I'm making all the shots, and that's hard for some owners, and that's something to really talk about. That's a big trust issue. It doesn't mean I don't listen to my owners. That's the other thing. We really are a team here, but on a day-to-day life, I decide whether the horse goes out and for how long in what pasture, if it goes with another horse. Also, in terms of managing my staff, you know, I have educated them to look at the legs and to tell me, you know, if and watching, is this horse okay? You know, he's really laying down, you know, immediately coming to me. You know, I go out and check pastures, checks, walk down the aisle. So we're always looking at the horses. We know their personalities. And then also managing when, so my vet comes twice a month. We have a stable call every other Wednesday, and she knows the horses, and we talk about the horses. And I really like actually having a lameness exam once a month on the horses, right? Because then it's not solely on me. There is another pair of eyes looking at our horses, and she goes, Megan, did you see this? You know, I think we need to do, you know, think about legend or a hock injection, or maybe the horse needs chiro, you know. So that way, you know, because on a day-to-day basis, you want to make sure you're not overlooking something. And I have her on speed dial. Luckily, she likes me. And I also have my farrier on speed dial. As soon as a horse is a little bit off, you know, or just feeling funky, I right away text him, or, you know, hey, you know, this horse is coming, this horse is going, we're going to the horse show, you know, I'm worried about a nail, you know, like he knows everything. I think that's really important, because I think a lot of times as owners, some people in boarding facilities, because I've talked to my vet and farrier, they don't treat them as a team. And you know, like if you're feeling something 2 weeks out, like something's a little bit, oh, he's not lame, but you know, he's stiff, you know, I tell them right away, so that way they are like, okay, and we do a lameness exam, check them. I really rely heavily on them. I also send them videos at horse shows. I don't tell them just the bad. You know, or when they're there, I'm like, hey, look, this horse is feeling so good. I want you to watch, because they are so a part of my team. My success is truly because of the people I have on a daily basis helping me. And not only my vet and my farrier are my team, my staff, as I told you, my stall cleaners, you know, if a horse has been pawing, and maybe I don't catch it. I mean, I can't look at every stall. And so my stall cleaners are awesome. They're like, Megan, there's hay left, or, oh, this one was pawing, or, you know, his poop isn't that much. That's just as important as the training that I do, you know? And so that's what's different also at least in my training barn, is that I really rely heavily on my team. Now, the owner is also a part of the team, right? However, they get to enjoy a lot of it. I can tell you right now, I sometimes wish I was a client. You know that, yeah, but they should. They devote a lot of time, a lot of money, and they should enjoy their horse. And my job, some of the time, and some of my clients have asked to take away that stress, and I do. And so they can come and enjoy their horse. However, they also see their horse on a regular basis. They're brushing their horse. They're putting their hands on the horse. And when they feel something is funny with their horse, they tell me immediately, and then we talk. Or they're like, oh Megan, maybe I want another massage or some chiro, or I saw this, or there's a little rub, right? Something maybe I missed. I rely heavily on them as well.
For sure.
You know, they're very important, as well as we have a saddle fitter. We have a chiro, an acupuncturist, and a masseuse, equine
as
masseuse.
a trainer, you schedule that. The client doesn't have to worry about that. We're at a boarding, most of the time at a boarding facility, it's on the owner of the horse to make their appointment with their farrier. Maybe some barns may have a sign up because there's farrier,
Yep.
one or more farriers that may come, and you just sign up for certain
It
days,
just gets done.
you know, or there's the spring and the fall shots, and you know, sometimes you gotta just do it yourself, and you handle all that.
Yep, but it gets and there's no extra charges at my facility. I know each facility is different. I like to keep things simple. It's about the training of the horse, and the rider, and so it just happens. So like I said, the vet comes twice a month. However, I can text her if there needs to be another appointment, and that's all scheduled. There's no one needs to hold the horse. No one needs to, you know, come from their job. They can still just come and enjoy their lesson. And then same thing with the farrier. No one needs to come and hold the horse for the farrier. It just happens. Things just happen. However, we discuss it, talk about it. I'm trying to think anything. Same thing with the saddle fitter, the equine masseuse. It's all, I arrange all of it. And before every month, we discuss how many they want and go from there. The other nice thing about a training barn, at least mine, is I tell them I have a lot of professionals, and sometimes, you know, they have business meetings, and, you know, life gets in the way. If they tell me soon enough, if they're going to miss their lesson due to a meeting or something that's going on, I will be able to work the horse that day. If I don't get enough notice, unfortunately, I won't. But I don't like missing the lesson or the work. So that's the other great thing, that, you know, unlike with the boarding, you know, you really have to be more dedicated, I think. To be honest, I'm the one who's holding everybody accountable, but if the owner is not able to make it, it still happens. However, you know, I think at a boarding facility, you know, then the horse misses the day. And so the routine is so important in the training.
For sure, for sure. So I'm trying to think of how other ways that a, you know, boarding facility might differ. Is your facility gated?
No. I do want to put in a gate. And I do want fencing around the whole property. We do have some perimeter fencing, but no, we don't have a gate.
Yeah, it's very few, at least where I live, there's not really too many, I think, boarding facilities that are gated. It's just an expense, I think. And that's kind of the other thing, and how maybe training barns and boarding barns are somewhat similar, is that it's very expensive to own the facility. And the maintenance and the upkeep. So, and that's something I think both boarding barns and training barns, you know, deal with, is the overall cost, keeping costs down while maintaining quality service or to their clients. But
I think it's just overall expenses, and it keeps going up. And I think, like everyone, we just want to do our best. Like, I try to run my business or my training facility as a business.
Right. Well, it is a business, right?
Yeah,
it is.
You know, but dusting is important, and you know, I want the aisles swept, and I try to minimize the cobwebs. We have flowers out. You know, I try to have it look nicer and neater and cleaner and more organized than the next barn.
Right.
and talking about different barns, I love going to other people's barns, whether they're boarding barns or training barns, privately owned, because I want to see if anyone is doing something better than I am. And then
Right. Learning from each other.
Yeah, I really do. I love it. I learn so much, and maybe they have a better policy or system that's safer, and it's just so important. The most important thing for me is that my horses are healthy and safe, and that my riders are safe. And the rules, we have a lot of rules in place. That's something I would want to touch on, whether it's a boarding facility or a training barn. But the rules are in place, but because probably something bad happened, and we're just trying to keep you safe. It's not anything about trying to control you or manage you. It's like, I just don't have the time to deal with someone getting hurt. I really just want to have fun with horses.
For sure, for sure. So how does your facility handle, obviously, each client has one or more horses, and each horse has their own gear, tack.
Yeah.
You have, I've seen many, either boarding facility or training facility, they have like large group tack areas, tack rooms, maybe where like all the bridles are on the left wall, and all the saddles maybe are on the right wall, and then maybe straight ahead is all the saddle pads or something. How do you, and then there's places where everything is lockered and very, private. Yep. And so I've seen the full spectrum.
Yeah, and so my barn is all about flow, and it's actually like that movie Turner and Hooch. This is not your room. This is your room. So even looking at my barn, I have monthly training clients. They have their own locker and their own tack room, and there's lockers in it. And they have a 3 tack up bays, and it's 13 stalls, and it's all together. And they have their own tack cleaning area. That is their area. And then if you walk further down the aisle, there's 5 more stalls, and there's a separate tack room. And that's where the school horses live. And they have their own lockers. And so each horse, whether it's a client horse or it's a school horse, has their own locker and their own brushes, their own tack. Nothing is shared. And same thing with the saddle pads, coolers, and blankets. Those are located only, like dirty blankets and saddle pads, they got to go on the door, not in the lockers, no stinking up the tack rooms. And so no mold, none of that.
Mold, so yeah.
Yeah, and so they usually have a long locker, and they have 2 doors, a top one and a bottom one, and the top one is smaller, and that's for their personal stuff for my clients. And I ask them, gloves, helmets, please keep them up there. And then because I'm riding the horses, there is the saddle, the bridle, the brushes that my staff is going to use. Anything that's public that they're going to use goes in the bottom. And so I ask my clients to do that. And usually things do not run away. I used to have a tack room, and we had the wall, and we had their stuff. And then stuff walks away. I was like, where'd it go? And then what I tried was bridle, and then I asked each individual person to bring a tack box, and they would stay under it. Stuff still walked away. And I'm like, what is going on? It's all labeled. It drove me insane. And, clients were coming to me, where'd my stuff go? And I'm like, I have no idea. This is driving me insane. And I was wasting more time on trying to find brushes and stuff that ran away. So I was very fortunate. A client's husband of mine built our lockers, and beautiful lockers. And so things are not walking away anymore. And so we're very lucky.
How do you handle things? Horses and horse manure attract flies. So how do you handle, like, for instance, fly spray? Is each owner responsible for keeping their horse stocked up in fly spray, or?
Yep.
work?
Yep. I ask that they get their own fly spray, whatever kinds that they want. I also buy extra fly spray that I use community, but usually each individual owner brings their own fly spray. It is kept on their door. We also have screens on the barn, and so that minimizes them, the little bugs coming in our barn. We also have fans for each stall and the aisle. And we put out fly predators in each pasture and our manure pile. And then I also go to Farm and Fleet and I get these like toss and trap things. So I put all over the barn. I'm crazy about bugs. I hate bugs. And we live in the woods, unfortunately. So, but I think for the most part, we're pretty lucky that we've minimized a lot of the bugs.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. Well, I was just curious, basic things like basic supplies, how that's handled. Because, at a boarding facility, obviously everybody has their own. And I've certainly have come across facilities where, like you say, you have your horse, maybe your horse lives in a stall at the boarding facility, and maybe you've got a bottle of fly spray on there and you're asking the staff, hey, when the horse goes out for the day, can you spray him?
Yeah.
Well, I've come across facilities where people just use, they just grab the closest bottle and feel free to grab on, and I don't care. It's not my fly spray, but it's sitting here and I'm going to use it, which is
no, they're pretty. My clients are really good. I'm really proud of them. There's not a lot of that, and sometimes they share, but they don't. Each bottle is labeled. And also going on that, like if they want supplements, they provide their own supplements, and that's stored in a feed room, so everything is individual.
So let's talk about feed. A lot of boarding barns, it's like you come there and they're like, well, I have either this option or this option.
Yep.
Which one is your horse to have? And maybe the owner says, well, I think the horse gets a scoop, the scoop,
Yep.
proverbial scoop.
Yep.
There's 8 million different scoops out there, but, I think my horse gets a scoop. And, maybe on the card, it says a scoop. And then, if the horse blows up to, morbid obesity and the owner doesn't say anything, they just keep feeding it. And how does that differ at your barn as far as how do you handle nutritional requirements and, of course, the diet?
Well, and that's hard, and that it should be individual too, I think. However, that's hard because requiring a training or a boarding facility to have 10 different feeds, I think is unrealistic. So I am very similar to boarding barns, and I provide 2 types of feed. They're by Purina. I also have, I call him the feed man, comes in and we go down the aisle and looks at each horse. However, if owners come in and they prefer a different feed, as long as they provide a tub for the feed to go in and the feed each month, I am more than happy to feed it. But we also talk, like I said, I have my checks and balances. My vet looks at each horse and she'll tell me a body score. We'll also talk about the feed. Every couple of years, I discuss whether I should, switch different feeds, or is someone doing it better. We're always, every couple of years, I'm talking to my vet about that. And again, it's all individual. So when people come in and they prefer a different feed, I'm totally open to it as long as they provide it. But my barn only offers 2 types of feeds.
Sure. So back in a past life of mine, I managed a barn and we had 42 stalls, I believe. Several trainers. It was boarding and training facility. There were 2 full-time trainers there. There was also, when I arrived, there was just people there that were just boarding, and it was I call it the Wild West for feed.
Yeah.
It was probably 8 to 10 different types of feed, and it was just going down and feeding the horses was just chaos because there were so many different things on the cart. And so as I kind of got settled in, we actually brought in a nutritionist and actually ended up switching over to a different, as you mentioned, different supplier, to somebody have a different, better product, better nutrition, better quality, something that matches their hay, whatever. And I think we still, because of the number of horses we had, I think we still probably at that point had 5 different types of feed at most. You know, it was a lot, you know, it wasn't a huge barn. It was 42 stalls and we were full. So, but I've certainly been a client, like as a boarder at barns where there's been 80, 90, 100 horses. And so
That's a lot.
incredibly difficult for barn staff to juggle a lot of different types of feed. So for sure.
Yeah, I think it's unrealistic. And if you're at that such a big facility, I think the details get missed. But you know, I think it's hard. And like I said, we have a feed room. We have multiple shelves. I love Smart Pack. Everything is labeled. You know, each horse has like a little shelf and it's labeled. Each horse has a different bucket. Also, mine is all measured. I have a scoop, and it's written out on the board. We also can weigh if we needed to. However, we mainly rely on the scoop, and it says 1 pound, 2 pound, and it's all written out. And it's a Prina feed and a Prina scoop. So there you have it.
So how do you handle if a client comes in and maybe they've got like a 3-horse trailer? Do you have how do you handle trailer storage? Do you offer that to in your training barn? And you know, is there extra fees? Because I've been at boarding facilities where there's 50 different trailers because everybody's got one and there's no charge. And then I've been at ones where you know, there may be 1 or 2 and there is a fee store, and that. So it definitely is different.
I do offer trailer storage. I don't have a lot of room, and quite frankly, it's only been 1 to 2 trailers, and it's a flat monthly fee, and that's it.
Yeah, people got to understand, I think, and I think a lot of people get a little bit upset about it, but they don't have room to maybe store it at their home.
Yeah, yeah.
And they can't necessarily expect somebody else to store their stuff for free, because there's a certain liability with having people's assets on your own property.
Yeah, there is.
It requires room, which requires land, space, and such. So for sure, that's always been an interesting thing that I think maybe people don't think about. Is there, you know, they're so used to maybe they've been at one boarding facility for 6 years and that was their first horse, and that's how they think life works, and they may move to a different barn and not understand.
You know, the other thing I do for that, or I try to think, is I do try to have more of less like a family, even though it is a business. I have many clients who want to help out around the farm. You know, like I said, one client's husband, you know, he built the lockers. I've had another client's husband also, you know, put up mirrors, you know, that we have sometimes where it's a pasture cleaning day, and they get an opportunity to see what a little slice of my life is like. And so they're very supportive. They also bring me food, which sometimes is not so supportive because I get fat and I eat too much. But for the most part, I try to include everybody and listen to their ideas. You know, they're also reading books and magazines and watching videos and like, Megan, have you seen this? And I'm like, no. And so they help out a ton, and we try to also have social events, like my holiday party is a great one, so that way maybe, you know, it's
a or a family.
Yeah, so they feel included, and it is a family, and that they can socialize, because I realize each individual's needs and goals are different. You know,
I have a question for you.
Yes.
On that, basically a really good spin-off of that is, at a boarding barn, everybody talks to everybody and everybody gossips about everybody, and everybody's business seems to be everybody else's business. How do you handle it? You know, you do have a lot of clients, and I mean, it's human nature to be very curious about other people in your family or team and how they're doing. How do you handle a situation where maybe two two clients bump into each other and, oh, you know, maybe one says, oh, I didn't have the greatest lesson or whatever, and, you know, and then heads out, and the other person comes to you and maybe, oh, I'm so sorry, person so-and-so, you know, what happened? And I guess the human nature to ask, and I would say almost gossip. How do you handle that? That's
well,
a thing at barns. I think barn gossip is huge.
yeah, I think that's where my by appointment actually cuts out a lot of the drama, and a lot of the cattiness that may or may not occur at some barns. But you know, I gotta admit, I'm just like anyone else. I'm human. I love gossip. Why? It makes me feel normal. You
Yeah.
know, like I love it. I love to hear that other trainers have the same issues I have. I'm not alone. However, I try very, very hard not to talk about my clients to my other clients. And if I do, I try to only talk about positive things, in terms of, because I think riders can learn from one another. You know, one rider may be struggling with something, and say, hey, connecting them. But most of my riders are introverts and quiet people, and I try not to discuss them amongst themselves. And if one does come up, I just, yep, okay.
I
You
think
know,
that's pretty important because, you know, I mean, I've been in the horse world for a long, long time, and there's nothing more disheartening, I guess is the way I would call it, to find out that your trainer, your riding instructor, or whatever, you know, maybe it's, you know, you're only taking lessons once a week or once a month, you're riding, or somebody you clinic with is saying snarky things about you behind your back to other people, either in your barn or other people in the, you know, city that you like live around or whatever. And there's a lot of that happens.
yeah,
So that's really important for people to realize that, you know, it's important for their trainer to maybe to, you know, it's human nature for me to be like, well, I want to know all about that, but it puts you in a very bad position, and they have to respect you when you kind of say, well, you know, that's not really any of your
yeah.
business.
Many times, I have had clients ask me about specific other clients, and I've said it's my policy not to discuss them. You know, if it's not bringing anything positive, if someone's, you know, generally asking like, how did they do it? Of course, I will explain, and then that kind of thing, but not the starkiness. I don't have time. You
Right.
know, my day is so short, and as an athlete, I don't have time for negative thoughts. Like that's just not a part of who I am. And the one thing I've learned in teaching adult amateur ladies is they think about a lot of things that I never think about, that I've never even thought about. And they tell me their insecurities, and I should be a trusted friend, and they should be able to tell me those things in confidence, and I should be able to help them. Sometimes it's above my pay grade, you know, and like I said, being an athlete and a competitor, I don't have time for those things in the arena, and I try to explain that to them. You don't either. These negative thoughts, you know, you spend this time and money and love and energy, you're working too hard. We don't have time for that. And I think I'm really lucky. Most of the riders that I have, I work them so hard. They all work really, really hard. And they have pride in their work and their successes. And that they become a family, and they see how hard each other works, and they support each other. I think that's the beauty of my barn, to have all these wonderful ladies that are supporting each other instead of cutting each other down.
So I think I have two different directions I could go. How do you handle, let's say you're at a horse show, how do you handle other professionals who are unprofessional? And maybe I'll just narrow that, because that's a what do you mean type question. But for instance, how do you discuss with your clients the potential for poaching? And by poaching, I mean other trainers trying to steal clients and undermine you by maybe, hey, blah, 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 blah. Did you know that Megan, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? That kind of, because that, I mean, like I said, went back in another lifetime when I managed a pretty large, barn. There were multiple trainers in and out of there, and the poaching and the backstabbing and the trying to steal each other's clients was pretty rampant, and it took a while to get control of that. We got control of it, but it was ingrained and it was difficult.
I think it happens. It certainly has happened to me. Other trainers have approached my clients at horse shows, and rarely do I talk about it with my clients unless they bring it up. But usually I think the door's open. If you're not loyal or you're not happy, I would prefer someone actually talk to me, and then I can find a trainer that is better suited to your personality or training needs. For me, if you don't like it here, I don't want you. So for me, that's not a big deal. People are moving. Goodbye should never be hard, honestly. I mean, if someone can fit better in a different barn, if they can do it better than me, and great, awesome, no problem.
All right, so I don't know if I would say on the flip side of that. What was that?
But the other thing too, though, is I'm really fortunate. I mean, I'm not just a trainer. I also sell horses. And so, and I've had a long career in this area. I've made a lot of acquaintances and a lot of friends. And, we can just pick up the phone. And the thing that we have to remember in this community is, as trainers, as colleagues, we're going to spend 30 years together. Our clients are moving, growing, moving out of state, moving trainer to trainer. And I think we as a community, as leaders, as trainers, if we work together, we're a better community. And so a lot of the people out there are my friends. And we talk freely. They call me, they're like, hey, do you have a horse? Do you have this? So I think I'm unique in that fashion. And I don't want to teach everybody. Like I said, I love selling horses and I love matching people. I love going to the horse show and seeing 8 horses that I still consider my horses, even though they might be at my friend's barn. So, if that stuff happens, it does happen. It's happened to me. I've been disappointed many times. But it doesn't bother me. It doesn't surprise me anymore. I have too many good things to focus in on. So,
Sure.
Like anybody else.
So do you have situations, or how would you handle, or how have you handled, let's say you get a client in who owns more than one horse, 2 or 3 horses, and they kind of come in and their attitude is that I'm spending 2 or 3 times as much as anybody else in this barn, so I get extra special everything.
Nope.
Because I've come across that in my former life as being like a barn manager running, a large barn. And I've also come across that as being a client in a barn, a boarding barn, where somebody's like, well, you only have 1 horse here and I have 3. So I get priority over everything. That,
No.
and it's like,
I think that's a slippery slope. I think that's a really slippery slope. And honestly, I think a lot of these things go to leadership. I think it really depends on what kind of leader is leading the barn. I mean, I really am a leader. Whether it's training the horse or training the people and manning the ship when we go to a horse show, I expect them to all treat each other well. It doesn't matter how many horses you have or you don't have. I try to teach and treat all of my clients the same, and I try to treat them the way I want to be treated if I was a client. So They all have to follow the rules. And yes, those things have happened, and sometimes people leave because the rules apply to everyone. And if it doesn't, that's not a good business, and that's not a good leader.
Yeah. And I think it's hard when people are first starting out in the business with money being very tight in the horse industry, especially as a startup, either a startup boarding facility or a startup as a trainer or a riding instructor. I think human nature is to dangle money in front of people and buy somebody's attention or friendship or whatever. And I still see it. Unfortunately, I still see it.
I do too.
Barns around where I live, the barns around where I live, I still see I see trainers or riding instructors, and those are I don't actually use those terms as equal, because sometimes a trainer can teach, you know, like you do. You train the horse, you're also teach lessons, but there are people who don't have horses in training; they just teach. So I'm bugged, but I see people who are like, oh, you know, they trainers or riding instructors who have favorites because, you know, this person has maybe more horses in the barn than anybody else, or this person takes maybe more lessons per month or per week than anybody else. And so the money coming in from that person is a larger chunk and an overall income for a month. And it's a slippery slope. Like you said, they start to treat them as favorites, special things start to happen special, and then it just unravels from there.
Yeah, and the other thing to remember, I mean, in business, we should all have we should diversify. That's the way I look at it. And I think if
Eggs
you're
in one basket.
Yeah, if you put all your eggs in one basket, you're going to be in big trouble. And you know, I'm a very independent person. I like to have choices, and you know, I already put enough pressure on myself, and I want to do a good job by all my people. And the other thing is, being a teacher and a mentor to young women, you watch them struggle in their lessons, and you watch them. They get lots of success in the show ring. They also get lots of disappointments, and yeah, it should always be kept business. But you know, after you know, a lot of my students are with me for like 10 years. That's a long time.
And they go from a business client to more of a friend. And that's hard. I think that's also a very difficult,
I think
the business client relationship, and it truly becomes more of a friendship. And in this kind of industry, it's high probability of that. You know, my daytime job is accounting. I work in I work in the business world. So my interactions with my clients are not the type of interactions I had when I was full-time in the horse world. It's so much more personal.
It is
a friendship situation, and that's very hard when money is involved, animals are involved, somebody's livelihood is involved. And I think as a equine professional, for instance, you or me back in the day, we're highly aware of it because of it's our business. But I think when our clients or your clients start to kind of not think of you as much as the authority figure, but more of as a good friend, it becomes, I think, can become a very difficult relationship. And I don't mean to call women out, but women, I think different, and we tend to bond. The female bond is stronger, I think, maybe.
And we want to be equals, you know, that level of respect, and so having
difficult.
Yeah, having a hierarchy, but the reason I brought it up is whether you have 3 horses in training or you have 1 or you're leasing a horse, I put so much time into my students, whether it's teaching them how to ride or I put time into the horses, that it would be unfair and it wouldn't be me to treat someone better because they have 3 horses versus none, because you know, you're there, you watch them struggle and you see how hard they work. And I want them all to succeed, whether they have 3 horses or 1. It just doesn't matter. And, but also going on the flip side, that is a problem, you know, becoming friends, but I don't know any other way around that in terms of that. But it's always, I think what's most important, that we all know the boundaries. And at the end of the day, in the training barn, I run the show. I manage the horse's life, the people's life, and to me, I found that's a huge trust issue. You know,
Oh yes.
you know,
I've had my horses under my own care for a long time, and it's not like exactly like walking the plank, so to speak, but it is,
yeah,
tightrope when either, you know, a horse is in a situation or however, you know, to kind of relinquish that tight control and hope and pray that everything goes okay. So
yeah. And I think too, that also goes to leadership. Communication, which probably should have said first, is so important and part of my team.
for sure.
You know, especially with the owner, you know, if there's any issues, you know, that they're right away, we're talking about it and discussing it. You know, I think that's what's most important in the training barn, is the communication. You know, the other thing we didn't talk about in terms of a training barn, for mine, there's only one trainer, which is myself. However, again, I believe in checks and balances. I love to bring in clinicians for my own education, for my clients' education, and simply just to make sure that, you know, I didn't miss anything. I love having my clinicians work with my students. But, you know, they're like every other month, and I usually have 3 clinicians, 3 different types of clinicians come in, and there's such a value to it rather than just working with one person. But I think what's important is the clinicians I work with, we have the same training styles, and we can collaborate well, and we can talk freely. So I think that's another difference in the boarding barn, that there truly is a team, and there's all these checks and balances.
All right. I'm typing in the chat, just is for our viewers to let you all know. If you've got questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. We've got the live chat going here. If you missed it, should be a button to click and open the live chat. If you've got any questions for myself and Megan, go ahead and put them in there, and we'll do our best to address them. But I just wanted to make sure people were aware they could do that, because I think we kind of zipped right into things, and I didn't.
Yeah,
might have briefly mentioned it, but it's been a little while. So for those who are in there, if you have questions, feel free to post them in the chat. But what do you? So it's got. Do you get people who want to? I guess I'd say go into business with you, form some sort of business relationship. Hey, Megan, let's develop a new line of baseball caps for horse people, or you know, let's develop a new type of lunge line, or you know what I mean, or let's something. How do you that becomes, because you have there's sponsorships. A lot of riders have, successful riders and trainers have sponsors, but then you have people who want to maybe buy into the business. And that can be difficult. And the same can be true of, have you had a situation where a client has said, you know, my horse lives, when it's turned out in X pasture paddock. I want to rip all the fencing out and put the fencing I want in there. Oh, don't worry, I'll pay for it.
Yep.
I came across that issue when I was managing a barn, and they did not understand. I appreciated that they offered to pay for things like that, but it became the line of, this isn't your property, you know. that kind of it's that fine line that seems to get blurred, I think. But have you had that situation pop up?
I've had a few situations similar to that. So I've actually always wanted to have a partner. I don't know if that's real.
Not only do you do training and lessons, but like you said, you sell horses, and that's.
Yeah, I sell horses, but actually I wanted, a long time ago, I had someone, they wanted to be like head trainer. And so that way we would both be teaching and I would mainly be doing the riding. And I've also had an assistant who was teaching, and oh man, I loved it. I loved it. I thought she did a great job teaching, and she also, I didn't want to teach kids at the time, and it was just we created a pipeline. But I found you need to have the right personality that connect, and with them, it didn't, it ended, which made me sad because I really enjoyed being a mentor to my assistant. I thought she was a great teacher and worked really well with the kids, and I would do it again. I had such a great time doing it. However, she never became a partner, but she was under me, and I was teaching her how to teach and ride, and it was so much fun. I've also had clients who have owned horses and had sponsorship, and I think that's really a great opportunity for both parties to be a part of. But it's difficult, you have to have things written down, expectations written down on what's going to happen with the horses.
I think a perfect example of this, and maybe I would assume a number of people understand, but maybe not everybody, maybe beginners in the horse world don't. But if you look at the people that represent our country in an international equestrian sport, be it reining, eventing, the dressage, anything where you are competing against like the best of the best in the world, most of those top riders are fully sponsored and supported by one or more people.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that when you're competing at the very highest level, which we'll just call, with the world, on the world scene or the Olympic scene, the amount of money that takes is usually out of reach of most people. And so those people are fully supported by somebody. But again, that has to, like you said, it has to be considered a business arrangement. And I think where things tend to fail is when you get the power struggle of, well, if say I was supporting you, millionaire in my wildest dreams, and I was like, let's go buy you a horse and let's go get you, all over the world. But I still have to understand the fact that, I'm the check signer and you're the professional. This is your business in your world, and you make the decisions. I mean, obviously, as you've spoken to here already, as an owner, they make decisions too. But I think it becomes a bit of a power struggle sometimes.
Yeah, it does. And I think people need to be realistic on why they're doing, like, what motivates them. Why are they doing it? And also I think that's sometimes the downfall of the riders. Very rare do we get opportunities such as that. And we all want to take advantage of that opportunity, but at what cost? What really is the cost? And as the expectations change, and maybe they haven't been written out or even talked about, or maybe people are unrealistic on what's going to happen. And again, it goes back to what are the motivations of that individual who are wanting to sponsor you. Everyone has different motivations in finding that out. And so that's hard. And but I think if anyone gets the opportunity, they should definitely do it. And then they'll learn a ton from it. A ton.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
yeah,
There's,
it is always a power struggle, but I think the most important thing at the end of the day is the owners own their horses. I never forget that. At the end of the day, they always get to make the last decision, meaning they can always move their horse, right? They can always, they are paying the bills. However, I own the facility, and in signing the contract and coming into my facility, they have expectations of my training, my training program. And so therefore they have signed that they respect and want my training program. So that way, at the facility, I'm making the decisions. But at the end of the day, if they don't like it, they can leave, and that's right. They own the horse. And so sometimes it happens.
As you were talking, I flashed back to when I had to board my horses, and also when I was actually running one. And I think a lot of people who board and maybe are not really in the training situation and maybe bounce from boarding barn to boarding barn. And this is a little bit and a different topic, but when you look at, you said you own the facility, they think that the facility is like a public park.
No, it's not.
I had boarders that would just start screwing things into the stall fronts without asking, which damages the actual structures. Every time you put a hole in something, you're damaging it. If you're screw in, or you're nailing a nail in and then ripping it out and nailing it in a different spot. You're hanging things. I had people hanging giant buckets off of the front of their stalls without asking, and it's like they don't know that they understand how dangerous that is. Or they'll put a big hook on the front of a stall and don't realize, if it's maybe a slightly more narrow aisleway, you could have a horse catch its side on that hook. So it's like, not only are you damaging property without asking, but you're potentially doing something unsafe. And I've seen so many unsafe things that boarders have done because they're not professionals and they don't kind of stop and think of, is this safe, or am I going to be in a lot of trouble? Am I going to hurt somebody?
But the other thing though, they should still do the same at a boarding facility. It's not theirs, and what
they think of it as a park.
And what an analogy is, well, how about I come over to turkey dinner and, I have this nice painting that I want to give you and I'll nail it in your wall wherever I want. I mean,
Exactly.
they're not paying the mortgage. They're not paying for the stalls to be fixed when the horse kicks at the stall. At the end of the day, the facility is the trainers, or it's the owners or the renters, whoever. And even at the boarding facility, they should ask permission. It's just simple respect, and that is all.
Yeah.
And most of the time, I like to say yes. I don't like saying no. I want things to go well, and I think for the most part, everybody wants to have fun. So I think just being respectful and asking is really important. The one thing I didn't answer, you had said about pastures and ripping up fencing and all of that. I have had in the past people give me advice, and then of course, like, hey, why don't you have all weather footing? Why don't you have a covered outdoor? Why don't you have a vending machine? Why don't you have a real bathroom versus a porta potty? And it's, they don't understand what it costs. And I want all of those things. And with all of those things, that means then you need to pay more. So we can have all of those things. And again, like I said, it's a team. As long as I have clientele, I'm able to live my dream job, right? And we all get to enjoy my property and my training facility. And but without them, I can't do it either. And so we really do have to work as a team. So when clients offer to help pay for fencing and not fencing, but maybe they want a structure in their pasture, like a shed, that's like $3,000. And so I have 11 pastures, you know, and I have hay, you know, hay is $17,000 a year. Like, you know, those expenses come first, and I do want all the other things.
Mhm.
So when someone offers to pay for something, I'm like, yes, of course, that would be wonderful. If you want it for your horse and it works for me and you've asked, no problem. That would be wonderful. Um, you know, like I had improvements. I wanted fans in the barn in each stall. I also have these hay nets and stuff. So my current clients, I've asked them if they would help me. You know, it's your horse, your stall. I'm paying the electric and putting it up and blah blah blah. And they were all very kind, and they bought their own fan and they bought their own hay net, hay hoarder, so the management of the barn can be greater improved. I love it, you know, and then I didn't have to raise the cost of the training. But all of the, I mean, just add it up, you know, that's $130 and times that by 24 stalls. It is not cheap. Toilet paper is not cheap. We got a porta potty, you know, like
Right.
everything costs money. And so
Well, people don't understand, why can't you just add you got room for it, why can't you just add a bathroom? Well, you know, you think about a bathroom remodel on in your own home is anywhere from $5 to $15 or $20,000, depending on, you know, if it's master. But it's not just putting the toilet, the shower, and the sink in. It's
the well and the septic.
it's the hit on the water for the well. Does your well support that? And then you have to connect it into a septic somehow, or if you have a holding tank, that's a whole nother, because that requires monthly pumping, or, you know, however often pumping. And so, yeah, a lot of people do, they don't kind of, well, why don't you have the spot for it? Just do it.
Yeah. And I can tell you, all of us barn owners want all those things,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know. We do. We want our place to look just as nice as the next place. But, you know, sometimes it just boils down to, you know,
Yeah.
this year we're on the 5-year plan.
Mm-hmm. So you know, if somebody asks you and discusses it, they want an improvement. Like you know, our example was something out in a pasture or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, as long as they talk to you, you know, you're cool with it. Which is, again, that comes back to the communication. So
Yeah.
I guess, you know, we're kind of talking, a little of this kind of goes into the whole boarding as well. But, you know, I think the key things that we called out as far as the differences between a pure boarding facility and a pure training facility is a training facility generally is run. Your example of a doctor's office is wonderful. Things are scheduled. You don't just come and go as you please. You have appointments that you need to keep. If you missed your appointment, you're still paying for your appointment.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then it's run as a team, you know, we have a team. It's all I think it's structure. It boils down to structure and routine and communication. And then, you know, at the end of the day, the buck stops at me, whether it's on the care or it's holding you accountable for your horse's training or your own lessons. And so those are the benefits as well as the pros of having a training barn and that you're in. So yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Anything else you can think of? You know, I think we've kind of talked about a lot, but
No.
You know, I think communication is key, and people need to consider the situation they're going into, whether it is, you know, it could be like a half boarding, half training situation. And there's a lot of places out there where there's maybe even a trainer is acting as like almost the barn manager, but they also have people in there who basically board their horse. They may take a lesson here or there, but, you know,
Yep.
a little bit different. So yeah, well, thank you, Megan. I don't know if anybody has any questions. It doesn't seem like anybody's popped in here.
We got them all. We were that good. But no, thank you for letting me share, you know, and give everyone a different perspective on what the other side of a training barn is, and that we really want to help everyone succeed. And so the way it's run is to help me be set up to succeed and to enable everybody else to succeed. So yeah, that's why.
Well, you know, this kind of conversation has me, there's so many things we could talk about. We could spin out and talk about. We can talk about the buying and selling horse world. And I mean, there's so many things we should talk about. So
We should. So I guess we're going to have to keep talking.
maybe we put up another stream and we pick yet another topic.
Let's pick another topic and we'll talk about it. I think what's important is to be real. You know, I mean, there are topics that having that door open so each party understands what's going on.
For sure, for sure. So, well, I appreciate it, Megan. You know, once again, we managed to make this go a little over an hour.
I know.
At, an hour and 25 minutes, which is great. So we try to wrap this up by the 1 hour and 30-minute mark here. But
all right,
your time talking about this, and it's definitely interesting to get the perspective of a professional who you're not running a boarding barn, you are running a training facility, and that is so much different than a boarding facility. Yes, you are boarding the horses, only in the fact that they are there full-time and training with you. So
yep.
You know, it's a unique situation. I think that many people are.
I forgot one thing too. Sorry to interrupt. The other thing was, at the week before each month, I ask all my clients to give me their schedule for the month. And so it is all set out just like a doctor's office. You know, that's different too. Like, and I have them all, and obviously as long as they give me 24 hours notice, I mean, you can't have your whole month planned out, but we do try to get the whole month planned out. So I know where everybody is and what's going on. And so, yeah, I forgot about that. So there's always something.
Yeah. Again, that gets into communication.
Scheduling. All right.
We can discuss, you know, we could discuss the idea of buying and selling horses at another one. And
oh, that'd be fun. That's my favorite topic.
We can talk a little bit more in depth into what you do as far as the show scene and how you prepare people and how you organize.
Yeah.
We can talk a lot about that as well. So
yeah, that'd be fun.
Right? So
let's do it.
Yeah, if anybody is catching this on replay and has watched it all the way through, we appreciate those of you who are live. We obviously very much appreciate it, but feel free to leave comment questions below. Anything you might have for either one of us in the description, below the description box. There's a comment section for when this replays. And then Megan's contact information is also provided in the description box below. Her YouTube channel, her phone number, her email, her website. She's Lindinhof, and you can find her on Facebook. She's got a Facebook page. She's got a YouTube channel, and she's obviously got email and such. So I have all that below in the description box. So appreciate your time. You know, any final wrap-up thoughts that you have or at all?
No, enjoy your training barns. Come be a part of the team. It's a lot of fun. And
don't be scared of it.
Don't be afraid of it. And if it's not for you, that's okay too. Have fun at the boarding barn. And if anything, learn, you know, just try to communicate.
Yeah, I think the key to life is communication.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah, appreciate that.
Cool. Well, that was a lot of fun. Thanks for letting me talk about my favorite topics, horses, training, everything. I could talk all day. So cool.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple other live streams in our future. So thank you again. We will say there's a number of people online. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Appreciate your, shout outs of hello in the comment box, the descriptions, or in the live chat. I don't think, this live chat has gone, we appreciate using StreamYard. I don't believe that when this StreamYard video gets saved into YouTube, for some reason, the live chat doesn't save for replay. But so again, don't forget to use the comments below, ask questions. And if you've got a topic that you want her and I to cover in a future live stream, my contact information is on my channel. Megan's contact information is on her channel. It's also below in the description, or leave a comment on this one. And maybe we can get that covered in a future live stream.
Cool.
I think they're important to do. And, before we head out, our first live stream was about 2 weeks ago, maybe this coming Thursday. And we discussed Megan's interactions with the USDF's instructor certification program, as she is USDF Certified Instructor training through 4th level. Yep, she's got her hat on. And that video is available on my channel here, Opinionated Horsewoman, for replay. But I think it's also an important kudos to you, Megan, that the USDF was quite pleased with our interview and the video, and has asked to maybe link to it and otherwise utilize it. So I think these are really important. They're fun to do as a live stream in case we to ask questions, but they're also really important to have out there on YouTube, available for people to view at their leisure in the future. So
cool. Well, thanks for the great idea.
Yeah, I think it's kudos to you that our first live stream was very well received as far as your experiences with that program. So hopefully we can keep up the fun topics, and maybe we can consider some topics where we can bring in another, even one or two more. StreamYard here allows up to 6 people in there. It would be a little bit difficult to probably see everybody. You get a little bit smaller on the screen, but it's certainly doable. So if anybody's got a topic that they would maybe ask us to have more than one person, we can certainly do that. It might be kind of interesting to get a farrier on, get a veterinarian on, or something like that.
Yeah.
I think that'd be kind of neat too. So maybe we can work on something like that in the future. So
let's do it. That'd be fun.
Good, right? Yeah.
Yay! Cool. Thanks, Colby.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate. I think we're going to go ahead. For those of you who are still on live, appreciate you guys hanging out.
Thank you.
We're gonna catch you guys on the next live stream. So signing off. A good night, and thanks again, Megan. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you. Good night.
All right. Good night, everybody.